Welcome to the Teapot Reads. I'm the Teapot. This is what I am currently reading, and I'm so happy to see you here today. Hello and welcome. Today we're doing a book review that I have been promising for a while. It took me a little bit to finish that book, or this book, and that book is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. If you hear those whining noises in the background, it's Tank. He's currently just hanging out on my bed, and he's chilling, but he also just wants, like, loving right now. So that's what's going on over there. One Last Stop is a book I was super excited for. It came out on July 1st. And I actually was really lucky and I got an early copy of it because at work we were sent an early copy by the publisher and my manager was like, knew I was waiting for us and sent it my way. So I had an early copy and I still didn't manage to finish it before the book actually came out because I have been a very slow reader lately, but I have to say I'm just going to start off the review by saying I gave it 5 stars. I really loved it. I did read Red, White, and Royal Blue last year, and I did really enjoy it. I thought that there were a lot of weaknesses in Red, White, and Royal Blue, though, that this novel really doesn't stumble into or fall into. It feels so much stronger on just about every level. Before I get into the review proper, though, what is this book about? This is a contemporary romance. It has like a flair of like sci-fi fantasy elements to it, but it's overwhelmingly a contemporary romance. It follows August, who is in her mid-20s. She's just moved to New York City to finish her college degree. She has kind of always been a loner. It's been her and her mom, and then it was her when she moved out of her mom's like sphere. They're still very close, but it's August on her own, and she moves into this apartment with 3 other roommates who are all very close and are kind of intent on getting her into the friend circle, which is very different for her. She then, on the way to work one day, meets a girl on the subway, and subway girl turns out to be Jane, who is out of time. She's actually from the 70s, and she is stuck on the subway and cannot leave this train, basically. And August starts spending time with her, starts trying to figure out who Jane is, because Jane has, like, no memories. And very quickly and very easily, August falls head over heels for Jane, and yeah, that's the story. It is so cute. It is great. It's just an all-around great romance. I adored it. I don't read a lot of sapphic romance. Totally my fault. Like, I should pick up more. I don't tend to gravitate towards sapphic romance for some reason. Maybe because I don't tend to pick up a lot of contemporary romance. I pick up, if I'm going to read romance, it's going to be historical. If I'm reading like the romance genre, or I'm going to be reading fantasy with some romance elements. I have read some like sapphic fantasy and science fiction stories, but yeah, this is my first actually on purpose sapphic romance book. So it was a first for me. Hi, Tank. Lay down, my dude. He's like debating whether he should jump off. That's a bad idea. My ledger of perceived slights. That's just what it's called. I actually keep all my book reviews that I'm going to do in here, even if they're really positive reviews. I am going to be doing a non-spoiler and a spoiler portion of this video. Heads up, it might be a little choppy. I have like a list of talking points. They are not in the order that I'm going to edit them into, so this might be a little choppy, but we're trying something new with how I'm recording this. Let's talk about the characters, and of course we have to start with August, our MVP, the best character in the book, one of my favorite characters of the year. I fucking loved August. She like reminded me of myself a little bit, except without the social anxiety. I really liked that she really wanted a relationship, but was super inexperienced in relationships. And even though she was inexperienced, it didn't make her naive. It just made her, you know, I guess like book smart in a way, and not, you know, experience smart. And I liked that that wasn't seen as a negative thing. It was just seen as a phase of her life, a natural phase of everyone's life and everyone's life regarding relationships if they're interested in having them. I really liked that. I really appreciated it. And watching her come from that point was super, you know, great. It was healthy, it was mature, and it was full-bodied, and it was just awesome. I really thought that was a really smart way to do it. I feel like a lot of times when we see characters who haven't been in relationships, I think they're depicted as weak in a lot of ways, as gullible, as just waiting for their happy ending. And yeah, August was waiting for her happy ending, and I refuse to believe she ever is with anyone other than Jane, okay? But, you know, even if I refuse to believe that, that's a me thing. It's not the book made it impossible for that to happen. The book, you know, kind of said it was healthy to have more than one relationship and that it's okay. And it is. It's healthy. That's how most relationships happen, especially outside of fairy tales. Jane is amazing. I loved her. I loved her. She is such a strong character from the very first second she's on the page. You have no doubt about who she is, about what kind of character she is, and it was awesome. I loved everything about her. It's very hard to talk about these characters and not just keep saying I loved, because I did, about all these characters. I really appreciated that she was like a walking history, you know, pop culture stuff, but also like real world things, especially regarding queer rights. And I love that she was treated as more than just her history. She was treated like a full-bodied character. And I mean, all of them were. Everyone was super three-dimensional. Everyone was super well-rounded. Everyone was a pleasure to read about. Everyone felt like they could have been the main character, if that makes sense. Noodles the Poodle. I really have very little to say about this character, just that sometimes it felt like Casey McQuiston kind of forgot that there was a dog involved. But like, it's a dog with no plot relevance, so it's fine. Nico and Mila were the absolute rocks of this book. Not just together, but individually. That was something I was really concerned about, because sometimes I think when characters who are in a very long-term relationship and are somewhat defined by their relationship, you know, people do this too. They kind of define themselves by their relationship a little bit. And I think that's okay. It's part of your definition if you're that close to someone. I think that's good. I think it's totally fine. But I was worried that it would just be like Nico and Mila, the package. And it was not. Both characters were independently developed and had their own arcs and storylines that they had to come to independently as well as together as a couple. Really well done. Loved them. Total rocks. Loved Nico. His whole psychic thing, was not expecting that to be like as important to the plot as it was, but I really liked that it was. It just added to those sort of like sci-fi light elements that were going on. So nice. Wes was a little underdeveloped. He had an arc. I think he probably had a really strong, clear arc out of everyone involved. Of the side characters, his was like the most obvious, but at the same time, you'd say like someone would like mention something from his like backstory and you're like, wait, what? Am I supposed to know this? It feels like just a tacked on element. I don't know, he felt kind of underdeveloped in that regard. Of them all, he was probably the weakest character. I still really loved him. Wes was a great character, but yeah, like they would be like, oh yeah, and he was only really awake at night when he's not working, and it's like, okay, but then he's like there during the day and it's like, wait, so he's not just awake at night? Like, I don't know. It kind of all over the place. Character elements felt not sloppily placed, but just not as carefully placed as other characters had them placed. Isaiah is a queen. I loved him. Wasn't expecting this character since he's a little bit of a late addition. Like, late, you know, like he just comes in later than the other characters. Stole the show. I want a novel. I want a novel. I need a novel. One of the best things about this book was just how fucking queer it was. There was queerness everywhere. There was probably like 2 straight characters. Like, I loved that. You almost never see that kind of representation. It felt so comfortable. It felt so warming. It felt just wonderful. I felt so comfortable, so seen with this book. It was the sort of queer culture too that just like, it's realistic, you know. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. It's just really, it was so wonderful. It was like a warm blanket on a cold winter night. I loved just how unabashedly queer it was. Gay, trans, bi, pan, everything. I mean, obviously that's not everything, but like everything, you know, it was everything. And more books need to do this. More books need to do this. If you know other books that do this, I need to know. I need them, okay? I need them. It's really hard to sell me on modern romance stories. Like I said, if I read romance, I tend to go for historical or like something with a fantasy element, and in general, I just don't even gravitate towards romance. I really only picked this up because I had success reading Red, White, and Royal Blue, and okay, I must just say, every single relationship in this novel felt super fulfilling. It felt super great. Everything landed on a great level. I mean, it's a romance, a lot of happily ever afters, but they all felt natural. The chemistry between every single pair was healthy, was affirming, was happy, you know, like everyone in a relationship ended up being happier than the people, like, not than the people that weren't. I think everyone ended up in a relationship by the end. It's very Shakespearean, but I really liked that. The other romances that I've been reading this year, I have had very poor luck on seeing healthy romances portrayed. So this was a really nice treat to see that every single person ended up in a happy, healthy relationship. The main relationship, obviously, August and Jane. Perfect. It was perfect. It was angsty. It was romantic. It was sexy. It was cute. It had everything. It had absolutely everything I wanted out of a romance relationship. So yeah, just, it's great. It's perfect. It's great. August's growth through the entire book, and in fact everyone's growth, but the novel, it focuses on August. You know, it features her. She's the main character. She's the protagonist. She's the one we're rooting for. Her growth felt very natural. It felt very careful. It felt like it was incredibly respected. Everything about it was really well done. There wasn't any point where I felt it was rushed. There wasn't any point where I felt like it was unrealistic. It very much felt true to character, true to world, true to tropes of romance. Really well done, and it was a super fulfilling arc. She has a lot of even side arcs going on. Her relationship with her mother, relationships with other people, owning things, you know, and her relationship with Jane is like the center point of all these arcs, but her growing as a character, that's all her. Jane isn't even a crutch. Jane is just there. She's part of it, and August is growing as her own person and realizing who she is, what she's doing, what she finds worthwhile, how to be herself. She is really coming into her own, and it's great. It's amazing to watch. One Last Stop gave me major Invisible Life of Addie LaRue vibes, which is very strange, but I got those vibes almost instantly into the story. Addie is a queer character. Both Jane and August are queer characters, and in fact this book is populated with queer characters just like Addie is. But I think mostly it was the presence of the city in the book. In both Addie LaRue and in One Last Stop, New York is very much as much of a character as any of the named characters, and it's really lovely. It really takes me there. I've never been to New York City. You know, I don't have a landscape in my head that wasn't built by television and books. So to feel so present in this place I've never been is quite a strength, and I really liked that. It's weird to call it world building when it's our world, but this had really great world building in that regard. I think it also has like Addie LaRue vibes because yes, Addie is a fantasy book for the most part, but it's like fantasy light, and this is like romance with super light fantasy, but it has just enough of it to be similar to Addie in that regard as well. The sci-fi elements of this book really delivered. I was unsure how I would feel about it, but it worked really well, and I feel like even the ending when they resolved everything delivered. You know, there are some books that deal with like time travel and time travel stuff that it can't deliver on the ending. There are some movies that I can think of, like Palm Springs, like kind of delivers on the ending, but not really. But One Last Stop, it did it. It didn't feel hokey, it didn't feel cheap, it didn't feel easy, it felt complicated, it felt hard, it felt real world, you know, for this world. And it worked, especially in a romance novel. I think having these sort of quirky sci-fi elements really elevates it, makes it something special. It's not just like plain Jane fairy tale type. Not that there's anything wrong with those, but I think it's more exciting to have something like this going on. This book is by far much better than Red, White, and Royal Blue. I really enjoyed Red, White, and Royal Blue. Don't get me wrong, but from like a writing point of view, One Last Stop is so much stronger. Like I could tell even from the first chapter that this was leaps and bounds beyond where Red, White, and Royal Blue was in terms of writing and craft. Casey McQuiston was a great writer with their first novel, but I think this one just really shows how far they've come and how excited I am for whatever comes next, because if this was amazing, it's just going to keep getting better. So a much stronger novel. If you thought that Red, White, and Royal Blue was a little weak in some regards, like writing wise, like I definitely felt the ending of Red, White, and Royal Blue was really weak. This one will not disappoint. It is, yeah, mechanically and on like craft levels so much stronger. Something that I wrestled with while reading the book was the sort of positive, negative kind of combination. I'm not sure where I land exactly on it. I think there are perks, I think there are pitfalls, but there is this really rose-colored lens applied to the modern day queer culture. And yes, especially when you're comparing it to Jane's original lifetime in the 70s. She, you know, was fighting for queer rights, like literally fighting for queer rights, and queer rights have come a very long way since then. But the book, while acknowledging that, and I think it is important to acknowledge that things are so much better now, right? While acknowledging it, the book also kind of erases the modern day issues we have. You know, there's still a lot of homophobia. There's still a lot of prejudice. There are still a lot of people out there who want to take away the queer rights that have been fought so hard for. There are still people who wish it was like back in the 70s. There are so many issues still happening, and the book really disregards a lot of that, not just in regards of queerness, but in regards of like race. Honestly, in regards to pretty much anything hard. It is, you know, it's a book, it's literature, it's a little bit of a fantasy, right? Little bit. I mean, Jane is literally stuck out of time. A little bit more than a fantasy, but while also being great and being able to be like, yes, the world is better than it was in a lot of regards. It disregards that there are some bad things still happening. There are a lot of bad things still happening. And I've seen a lot of people complain a lot about this online, and I don't think it's something that detracts necessarily from the book. It's just something I wish the book could have acknowledged. It's something that I think the book, by taking this really, really generous view of the world and being super optimistic, which is really awesome, especially in a romance novel. You know, you want the optimistic viewpoint, but by doing that, it doesn't allow the book to actually explore a lot of the current issues we're having. Now, that being said, like, obviously it's a romance book. It has to adhere to generic conventions. But, you know, I think it's okay to ask for a little more sometimes. And that's kind of what I wish the novel could have delivered on, is just asking for a little bit more. August and her mother is a very complicated relationship. I have like a love-hate relationship with complicated parent-child relationships. Like Psych between Sean and Henry, I think that is a really interesting relationship to watch. And I think that the show completely failed it. And in a sort of reversal, I think the relationship between Emily and Lorelai on Gilmore Girls is another really complicated, interesting relationship to watch, and the show did really good work with that. The relationship between August and her mother, and I think August actually says at one point, this isn't... Tank, what are you doing? He's stuck in the blind. Tinker! Oh, you silly doggy. Hey, look. At one point, August even compares her and her mother's relationship. She's like, this isn't fucking Gilmore Girls or something like that. It was a great line. And I was like, okay, it's not. But there is like a lot of complicated tension there between the two of you, both positive and negative. And the book kind of lets it drop. I wish the book could have done more, especially the latter half after her and her mother get in a fight. It just felt like there was a lot of potential there that didn't see the light of day. Obviously her mother is like on this page for like maybe like 5 pages tops, like dialogue and everything, so she doesn't have a lot of page time. But August spends a lot of time thinking about her mother, thinking about the relationship, dealing with the trauma that her and her mother's relationship has put her in, because her mother did not treat her like a child. Her mother treated her like an asset, and there's a lot to be worked through there, and it wasn't ignored, but with the amount of time spent on it, I don't know, there just didn't seem to be as much fulfillment between the two of them as I wished I could have seen. The book does hint that at the end that there is going to be more work between the two of them. You know, their relationship is healing, it's growing, it's changing, but I don't know, more on the page would have been really nice and really would have added to the book, I think. One thing that I really loved about the book was August's uncle, August, or Augie, his plotline. He's not a character in the book, but her mom spends the entire book, you know, and August's entire life looking for her brother who went missing. And in the end, I mean, we go through a lot of emotion regarding this character. We go through finding out, oh, he died in this really tragic, horrible, historical event that like no one ever talks about. And then we find out, oh no, my God, he survived. He moved on, he lived, but then he died again. That roller coaster of emotion was beautiful and crazy and overwhelming and just really wonderful. I thought it was a really great way to subvert a lot of queer tropes, to subvert history in a way, and to still give us a tragedy. You know, we could mourn the loss of August the older, but also still like love that he was able to live the life he wanted for a time. It was very real feeling. It was very, very much felt like more than we're normally given for queer storylines. It feels like a lot of times, you know, the queer characters who die tragically, you know, the bury your gays trope, right? But he didn't, he died, but it wasn't tragedy, it wasn't tragedy porn, it was he lived and he died, and you have to celebrate the good and the bad. And I really liked that. I liked how nuanced it was. I liked how great it was. One of my major problems with Red, White, and Royal Blue was how long the ending was. The final chapter stretched on and went forever, and I feel like it answered a lot of questions I didn't even have. Like, a lot of stuff I didn't even care to know. It was just like, here it is, here's everything. One Last Stop also has a really long ending, but I feel like it actually answered a lot of questions I had, or if I didn't have, as soon as it started answering them, I was like, this makes total sense. Like, yeah, I want to know what happens to Jane afterwards, right? I want to know, does she ever visit her family? Is her family even alive? Like, what kind of thing? But I don't need to know, like, how they react. And it did that. It found the balance. It was like, they're going to go visit, but we don't know how they react. Like, we need enough of, like, a future unplanned, unknown to really be a satisfying ending, especially in a romance novel. And I feel like One Last Stop delivered on this, whereas Red, White, and Royal Blue kind of skipped over the line. I was like, I'm going to show you extra. So anyway, kudos to Casey McQuiston for satisfying me, the most important reader. No, but, you know, just, I appreciated it that the ending, while long, was appropriately long. I also really love the moment where Jane asks, or says, I should say, she tells August that she's thinking about going by BU again, and does, what is August thinking? August, like, of course, whatever you want me to call you. And I really liked that. I thought that was a great little moment, a touchstone for Jane, a moment of her arc. And I think almost a moment that she may not have ever come to had she lived her life in the 70s, you know? I feel like it's something that she had to go through this whole adventure with August and with everyone in order to come to that point. So I really liked that moment. One of my favorite moments in the entire book. All right, that is it for me. Those are my thoughts on One Last Stop. Like I said, I filmed this out of order, so it's going to be really interesting to go back and edit them into order. I'm really curious to see what order I choose to put them in. You know, I have some ideas, but it was kind of just talking points I had that I wanted to talk about. Tank was a little bit of a menace. Otherwise, yeah, that's everything I think I have to say about One Last Stop. I really liked it. If you haven't read it, I totally recommend picking it up, especially, like I said, if you like modern day romances, I think you're gonna like this. If you liked the movie Palm Springs, I think you're gonna like. If you liked The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, I think you're gonna like this. And if you liked Red, White, and Royal Blue, I think you're gonna love this. It's great. It's amazing. I think Red, White, and Royal Blue really set the standard for, you know, audiences really wanting gay romances, and I really hope this does the same thing for audience wanting sapphic romances. So, fingers crossed. Okay, also cannot wait for whatever Casey McQuiston puts out next. I will be pre-ordering it again and getting just as excited about it. I'd love to be able to see them get a hardcover release. I think that'd be pretty neat. That's it for me. That's all I have to say. If you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. I would be ever grateful if you did. And yeah, just thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking around. Let's talk about this book. Let's talk about other books down in the comments below. Let's just talk down below. And I will see you next time. I hope you are staying warm if it is cold where you're at. I hope you are staying comfortable if it is warm where you're at. And most of all, I hope you are enjoying a really good book. I'll see you next time. Bye.